Welcome to the Dr. Sam Mugzzi Show. We are advancing the paradigm shift with attitude. Special guests, new realities, quantum physics, health, psychic readings, and so much more. We are glad you have joined us. Sit back and take a ride on the higher consciousness freeway. Seatbelts are optional.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Ms. Mugzzi Show. Tonight, I have Peter Maxwell Slattery's good buddy on. It's Barry Littleton. He's the gentleman that was mentioned to us last week by Peter as one of his faves. So I had to go and hunt him down. I think there was some begging and maybe crying involved, but I was able to get him onto the show. He's absolutely brilliant. He allows me to go any direction that I want, and he's really great at that intellectual kick the can. Remember, we're all responsible for our own truth, but we're also from different factions of different star seeds, and so we each have a different piece of the puzzle. And Barry is really good with that. He's going to open your mind. He will introduce you to new subjects. Some you'll like, some you won't, and it's totally up to you what you want to absorb or put in the gray can. So with that, I'm going to bring Barry Littleton on. Hi, Barry.
Hello.
Hi, Barry.
How are you doing?
Fine. How are you?
I'm very well. I'm very well. It's a pleasure talking to you.
Pleasure speaking with you as well. I have 6 pages of notes, so I'm just going to grill you.
That's cool.
I went through your Facebook page. Now, Barry is on Facebook, and he has a lot of information, pictures, diagrams, about especially time travel that I found very interesting. So if you guys are looking to really expand your thinking, you might want to look him up on Facebook. I have him on evh.club, his own page, since he doesn't have a website as of yet. If you look under Star Speaks, there's a drop-down menu, and Barry's name is one of the options, and I'm trying to put all of his stuff that I can find on him so that you guys can have a one-stop shop. So, Barry, what have you been up to lately?
Not a lot. Just trying to continue to expand my awareness, more or less, and kind of observing what things are going on in the world right now, as far as where different perspectives come from a lot of different ways, and kind of knowledge is power in that way to a certain degree. You know what I mean?
I do. One of the things that I really appreciated with your information is that I don't see color of skin. I see frequencies, and I see an energy. And you have a fantastic energy, and I loved that about you.
Well, thank you, Doctor. I appreciate that. That's a very nice thing to say. I've gotten a lot of responses from the interviews that I did with Peter, and to be honest, I didn't want to really do them at first. He kind of got me to come forward with him somehow. Don't ask, but somehow he did that, and I didn't know what kind of response I would get, but what it's been very positive. And the amount of young star seeds that are reaching out, it's really been amazing. I mean, they're absolutely brilliant, and these are people that are now getting almost into their 30s, so it's been pretty interesting.
Teach me something. If you are an experiencer, which we're going to get into, why would there be any hesitation to come forward and share your story? What kind of thinking goes on? Teach us.
One would be, for me, is if you start having these experiences like I did, which were physical, they can destroy your life. Not in terms of the beings themselves do, but trying to deal with your daily life and pay your bills and do all that, and also kind of try to fulfill this other side of yourself that has been happening is rather difficult. I'll say this. It's bad enough if you're somebody like me, you like Star Trek. That's bad enough. You get criticized for stuff like that, science fiction. And if you even see a UFO, people are going to kind of talk about you a little bit, and let alone you say you've been on one or a couple of them, and some of the crew members didn't have bodies. Let me tell you, that doesn't go over very good at Sunday brunch or coffee, I doubt.
Have you noticed that oh, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I just found it interesting that a lot of people that are experiencers or people that had an intuition to life outside of this planet were really drawn to Star Trek. I didn't miss an episode. I absolutely loved it.
Mm-hmm. Yes, yes. There's a book that is called Earth, the Only Planet of Choice, and it's actually it's supposed to be a channeling from what's called the Council of Nine. And it's very old in terms of the channeling itself is old, like going back into the 50s. And one of the sessions, there's an individual that's addressed only as GR that's asking a bunch of questions, and of this channeling. All right, this GR individual was Gene Roddenberry, and that was before the original Star Trek. So he was involved more than what it would appear,
I am finding that with a lot of movies.
Oh, there's so much that is hidden, especially in science fiction. And I can often use and correlate several different movies or scenes that are related from various science fiction or movies that pertain to some of my experiences. So that tells you how much both the forces that are behind the experiences are behind this too, but also how much that influences some parts of our culture, that is much easily deemed as just fiction and couldn't possibly be real. I will
now, you were going to,
I'm
go
sorry.
to part 2 of the experiencers before I interrupted you that time.
Oh, okay, yeah. I'm sorry. You actually didn't. I tend to interrupt sometimes. I get excited. Anyway, the fact is also that I am African American. All right, and when I looked in the media and ufology, I didn't see anything about many other African Americans coming forward. All right, so that made more stress on it. And then I was missing time when I was an adult from several experiences. When I say missing time, I had somebody else with me, and then they were missing time. We're talking about 4 hours each time for 3 experiences there. We're doing over 12 hours, okay? And then by myself, I had another one that was over 4 hours, okay? So that really changed things. For the first one I had, this individual's with me. She's of Caucasian descent, all right? So when I look into this, the first time I find, is something I was aware of, which is Betty and Barney Hill. And he was a brother. She was of Caucasian descent. And they basically, probably, got some anal probes and some sperm stolen or whatever, and that isn't what happened to me at all. But that made me more hesitant to ever come out. And where I live is exactly not very conducive to it anyway. Does that answer that question?
Yeah, thank you. I was thinking that I do remember a past life that I told you about where I was African American. I can remember that. I can remember being every ethnic group out there, and it really opens your eyes to the diversity, but also you don't have any prejudice because you realize that you have a part of that within you. So how can you be judgmental? Do you have any memories like that as well?
Most of mine would be I can remember a couple of incarnations, yes, and I was a different color. But when I was here the first time, I was of melanin dominant descent, and I remember doing things going so bad that we had to use our eugenics to actually encode our melanin so that we could reawaken in our descendants for karmic debt and other reasons too at this time. So that led me into some things, that was I was born with past life memories, like you probably were. Mine were very vivid, where they would almost interrupt my conscious world quite a bit, and it wasn't anything like the Christopher Columbus I was hearing in historical class, in history class, So that threw another shake to it, and what I was seeing was very, very different from what we're being told, all right? And I can remember being told and knowing that we would reincarnate in our ancestors, and some of us would be aware. Does that answer? The more I studied what actually would be now called Black Dot Theory, which involves melanin-dominant meditations, and through the science of breathing also, to awaken the race memory through the melanin, okay, at the cellular level. And I practice some of these techniques. It's one thing to read them and hear about people doing them, but you gain God consciousness through action, not through sitting on the sidelines and listening to what other people said happened a couple of thousand years ago.
You know, you said something very wise to me. You said that people that are writing you, that are watching these shows, have more knowledge than we do or more experiences, but they haven't stepped forward yet. Can you explain a little bit more about that?
Yes. Well, the thing I've been seeing a lot is just, well, there's the thing that's been called so much, and, you know, I tend to try to steer away from some of the terms, the New Ager terms. I'm hearing them called star seeds, crystal children, indigo children, and the truth is I think maybe it's more like Homo superior right now. And you have a number of souls that incarnate and that are having life memories now, past life memories, okay? And not just that, are vibrating at a higher frequency. They're a little faster. They're more aware. They're more aware that they're galactic citizens. They're more aware of a lot of things, you know, that maybe humanity is about to eradicate itself. And in that way, the intelligence of the ones that are coming forward now, it was different when I was younger. I would often test, like, young starseeds, as they're called. And I'm a very strong telepath, as you and several others are. But I would, you know, think to one of these young kids when they're playing in their crib or something, and they'd jump up and look at you, and they'd almost be offended. Because they'd be like, you know, well, who the hell are you to think to me like that? No one else is doing it. And I remember how I felt as a child. No one else seemed to be able to do telepathy. And more than that, I could do thought transfer. And other people were not able to do it. They might catch up a little something, but, I mean, it wasn't like you might know someone's calling before the caller ID goes off. You thought about that person. That's general telepathy, but that is not telethought transfer. That's a long silence.
Are you there?
Yeah, I'm getting nervous. There's a long silence there. Did I not answer the question?
No, I hit the wrong button because I mute myself. I hit the wrong button. Okay, I'm going to say something that I know is going to shrink your panties and pull your hair back. And a lot of us are facing this where we can find like-minded people on the Internet. We can have discussions with people that they know what's going on in the world. They know about the pharmaceutical companies. They know about HAARP. They know about the UFOs. They see them in the sky or they see them wherever. But then you go like to the grocery store or you go to a card game, and these people are just so dense. They have no clue what's going on. They don't look up. They're not aware of anything that you are. I mean, I could write a whole library of stuff that I know that my neighbors don't. How do you deal with that? Watch, this is going to get them going.
No, I will say this. I mean, it's going to sound negative, all right? And I don't want myself to be perceived as that, like I'm a pessimistic person, all right? But giving it be that I just had an encounter with an individual that was very negative just before we did this interview, that it's just interesting to me. You know, it's past gone now, but I think as far as certain negative forces and that are things that are against the agenda, the divine plan down here is unreal. But I think this is the first thing we have to say, and I'll answer your question like this, all right? We have to evaluate this as that. Now, as you have been told, as I've been told, as most people have been told in every religion I've talked to, our soul, our spirit is immortal. Have you been told that?
See.
Good answer. As far as response, anyway. I'm glad I can understand it more. The next thing, okay. So you understand that you are an immortal soul, okay? Everyone else is Okay, given that. Okay, now, you might be a little different. You're very aware. But most people, when I ask them, okay, so do they feel that they've lived on this planet before? Do you?
I have memories, so I cheated.
Yeah, okay. See, I have memories too, so we're one of some of those that are more aware. You know what I mean? And some of the things that are keeping other people subdued are not subduing us. All right? That doesn't make us better. It just makes us different. Our cognitive abilities are different. We have more energy to perceive the other side, the left side of awareness, heightened awareness. Anyway, the problem is this. And for most people that even believe, and the people even have argued me on this, will say the same thing, yes, to both the things you just did. But then when I ask, can they remember their past life memories, they think they've lived before, but can they remember it? Can they access those soul life memories? The answer is no. And most people don't know where they came from before they were born. They don't know where they're going when their body quits running. They're going on auto-suggestion put out there by social economic religions, and that's good enough because it's so hard here just to pay your bills and go to school and go to work and take care of your kids, and all that consumes all your attention here and is hard enough as it is. So let alone want to experience these other things, all right? So the problem I have is this. The fact that you or people are immortal souls, and here we can't remember anything. So the fact being, we may have reincarnated hundreds of times and can't remember it. And I've heard many people saying, oh, well, just when you incarnate into the flesh, it's just you forget everything because you're here for the experiences, yada, yada. You know, that doesn't work for me. It seems a lot like being brainwashed to me, being wiped clean. And that leads me to what I'm going to say. How I deal with it, to answer your question, Doctor, is this is a prison planet. We have to accept that the universe is a soul recycle factory, and that this here is a prison planet. And when we get here, I'm sorry, I won't go too far with that, but I'll stop there with it. But that's what I have.
I'm going to bring it back up.
Okay.
I'm going to come back to that. Okay, but I mean, like, what I liked was your analogy of the different types of people that are here, that we have, you know, these very intelligent people that have their memories. We have high spiritual people that are connected to Source really strongly, and yet then we have the box of rocks, and we're all supposed to get along. Yes.
Well, I think if you want to look at things as far as most people look, there's been some type of a war, okay, in not just this planet, but in our galaxy, all right? And that whatever we would want to call Galactic Central would have been some type of an empire, most likely, empire type of structure. And what you had there is you have also your souls, just like this planet, that are criminally insane, deviants, murderers probably, you know, on that type of soul frequency, that type of soul configuration that is chose that or is created that way, I don't know. But these souls were wiped clean and sent to a prison planet, all right? A very dangerous population there. But then what you also have at this Galactic Central is some type of empire type of structure, I think. And if you have the type of souls that were creative geniuses and nonconformists, they created an issue, a problem. So they were wiped clean and sent to this prison planet also. All right? So in turn, what you have is on this prison planet, you have a population of mostly dangerous, unstable population that within there are these creative genius and almost angelic type of people. And I would say...
I love that.
You know, I mean, see, well, if that guy is wrong. But turn on the 5 o'clock news. How long can you watch it? I mean, it's how many times you have people killing their own kids, murder, killing kids going to see Batman. I mean, are you kidding me? It is horrible, the stuff we see down here. And for anyone who would want to think, Well, how come extraterrestrials don't come down? How do they come down? Are you think they're crazy? You want them to be crazy? Why would they come down here amongst this horrible population where you're seeing them? Look at what they're doing to their own bodies. Look what they're doing to each other. They're destroying their own planetary sphere.
Okay, I can take that one step further. You're going to crack up. That I was thinking about that because you told me that a couple of days ago. So I mulled it over and I was thinking about it, and I thought, if everybody's praying that they want this Savior, they want Jesus to come down and save them and pay their bills and put food on the table and help them lose weight or get along with their husband or whatever, or work on their car for them. But everybody's wanting this Jesus thing out there. And it cracks me up because if Jesus showed up, can you imagine what he would go through? If we're going through it, he's going to go through it. So I thought, just for fun, you want to role play?
Yes, that's fine. You can. I think I'm following you.
Okay. We're just going to do this for a few minutes. Okay, so I'm going to pretend like I'm Jesus, and you pretend like you're the box of rocks. Okay?
Rock.
And let's say that we're my box of rocks. So let's say that we're at the gym, we're sitting on a bench together, and I say, hi, I'm Jesus. I just incarnated here to come down and save the world. What would you say?
Could I get incarnated into a body so I can have sex?
Well, sex isn't the answer. Self-love is the answer. Mastery is the answer. You see where I'm going? So everybody can kind of...
I'm just teasing you a bit. You do realize that, right?
I know. But my point is that if people can't treat one another with respect and love and courtesy, what do you think they would do to Michael? Or what do you think that they would do if God came here or Jesus presented himself to you? It would be the same thing that what we're dealing with. He'd be scratching his head going, this place is crazy.
Well said. We spoke earlier of things that were often similarities to movies and in science fiction. That brings me to one that would be Star Wars. And when I say that, the structure that they were dealing with, you have like an empire type of thing there that had taken over, that was run by what they called the Sith, and you had the Jedis. They were kind of like what we would call security of the first world, used to be said in ancient times. Anyway, that kind of makes a certain sense, doesn't it? And they got pretty much overthrown, and that whole empire was ruled in darkness, and it was on a galactic scale. And I think maybe that needs to be looked at a little different when we're dealing with our own galactic central, and why something that so many people that are hearing our voices right now have heard, that Earth is in quarantine, and why we're not a part of what's really going on in terms of universal activity. And I don't know. Is that going far enough? Does that answer that at all?
I want to qualify that because there's two types of quarantine, and I think people are getting them mixed up because I saw somebody write something on one of my videos earlier today. There was the video to stand back and let these kids develop, work their issues out, let's see what they're going to do, right? But after December 21st, 2012, and you don't have to agree with me, please object if you wish, but now there's a different type of quarantine where it's dependent on the individual's frequency. If the person is blind and can't see, those people are off limits, because just like we did with the Jesus scenario, why would a 13th, 15th, 18th dimensional being, even a fifth dimensional being, want to try to communicate with these people that their biggest concern is where to get their next packet of cigarettes or how to take the cap off of their beer bottle or something. You know what I mean? So there's a new quarantine that's in effect, but the ones that are grounded, that are authentic, that are in the love frequency, that have an open mind, that are looking at life objectively instead of emotional outrage, those people are actually experiencing contact in a variety of ways.
Yes. I think you nailed that completely on the head. And I say this in this way. Every time that a representative of the love frequency of God has come down, okay, they have been pretty much assassinated. And there's only a few that we're going to be familiar with in our cycle, in this new cycle we're in now, because what I remember of the past, the original sons of God, which is what we're always called, are gone. And were eradicated long before this epoch now, all right? And in that way, there's only relegated to just, the great magicians of the past, but we still can't explain the structures that exist that they created. So in that way, why would any representative wish to come back here in the physical flesh like that? Okay? So to be assassinated like so many have been throughout history here. So what we're dealing with is a different type of first contact right now. And that's why it's so subtle. And you're seeing people that are having these experiences, and that's why I've spoken before. A lot of people have said to me when I released start talking about what's really happened to me, the physicality of it. A lot of people say, you're so lucky, or things like that, or I've never had contact. But the truth is, the average person, this type of contact is like this right now. People that have seen, if you've seen a UFO, and I mean, if you've witnessed it for maybe a couple of minutes, or you lost even just a few seconds kind of witnessing this object, you kind of felt something for it. It was just maybe, I don't know. You know what I mean? But anyway, you need to realize that maybe you should seek a hypnotic regression over the time you saw this object and see if that's all really happened. You just saw it, you wind up looking up, and you lost 30 seconds or something. We wouldn't think, and that's why so many times there'll be a crowd of people and only one or two people or a few people will be able to see a craft when the others can't. And it causes a disturbance sometimes. It's not meant for the others, and it's a type of contact that's going on. And don't think that an entire, whatever name you want to use, alliance, federation, whatever, would stop what they're doing to try to make contact with a single individual. And that's exactly what's going on. And it's going on a level that is so subtle and so subconscious, if not superconscious, that the retention of memory is nearly impossible in the state of asleepness we are. So, but when you go for something like a regression, you find a good hypnotist that you can build a rapport with before you start working with them, and try to let them get you into the theta state where you can recall what really came up or the kind of communications you might be having in the dream state. It's worth time.
Yesterday, my web designer, she was getting ready to put your video together, and she puts the pictures and stuff, and apparently she was going to take a break and went to her kitchen window. And outside her kitchen window was all these white, billowy clouds. And very distinct is this black, large ship. It wasn't some little dot. It was large. It was either it was a ship that was like Valiant Thor's, or it's the Nordic style. It's not round. You can see the edges and the depth of this thing. I don't know what I did, but this morning she sent it to me. I couldn't believe it that yesterday. So it's going to be in this video and people can look at it, but start looking at the skies. And there are people that are listening to these shows that are getting tuned in, because I've noticed you Ray, Peter, Alex Collier. There's just many experiencers that they learn the frequency of their people, and they know when there's a craft outside, and then they go outside.
That's interesting, and this is what I'll iterate on that a little bit. The ship that she probably saw, it's interesting because when you deal with certain engines that they're using, a certain technology, like a type of orgone energy, what we would call prana, Wilhelm Reich called it prana, or orgone, but, the Hindus called it prana, as in pranayama, which I studied for a while, and chi, it's been called chi. Anyway, that is the energy that also generates a lot of these engines, all right? And the engines have a habit of generating a type of a cloud. Some of them do. They can be used as a cloak sometimes, but they often tend to form lenticular clouds, which tend to look like little UFOs. Anytime someone sees that they see a cloud, a smaller one, it has an individual band of a rainbow band in it. I'm sure some people every now and again have seen that, just a unique cloud in the sky that just has a couple of rainbows in it. That's another effect that is generated by some of these engines. So that is most likely a cloak and a ship that's going by. But you're also dealing with a density, a non-locality that makes even dealing with that hard.
Well, anybody that is listening to this show, if you guys are taking pictures, please send them to Enid, ENID, at drsammugzzi.com, and she'll include them in our videos. And that's DRSAM Mugzzi, MUGZZI.com, and we'll put your pictures up. Anyway, okay, I wanted to ask you about this. I have been drawn to the cube, and the Matrix talks about that everything on this matrix, this planet, began with a cube. When I went to your page, the first thing I saw on Facebook was the cube. So what can you tell me or us about the cube?
That's interesting because right now I can tell you that that's going to take us kind of two separate ways, if you're all right with that.
Go.
Okay, the first would be that the cubes, a lot of experiencers have reported seeing these cubes, these black cubes, on ships, all right? And also there have been a number of negative experiences with even things type like shadow beings, that these beings have been seen carrying a black box, all right? When we get into the type of experiencers that have seen black boxes, you've got two types of experience. One of them is myself. I've seen one, all right? My friend Bill, that I did my first interview with Peter with, he's a UFO author, wrote a book called Beyond Watching. But he's got a unique way of photographing UFOs. But anyway, he had seen a black box also. The one he saw was larger, 12 foot by 12 foot. I had seen him on a ship, and that's how we kind of became friends anyway. But he was in green body kind of. I was there physically. But I saw this. He said there was a black box in this kind of the top of this column of light, all right? The one that I saw looked like, I can even put it, it looked like a black box that had nanotubes, carbon nanotubes coming out of it, going in an upward spiral. To be honest with you, getting a frame of reference, it looked a lot like, there's an episode of the original Star Trek called Spock's Brain, where a chick comes and basically removes his brain on the bridge and puts his brain in a box to run a central complex of an entire civilization. Do you happen to remember that one?
Yeah.
The box that he was in, it just looked kind of similar to that, all right? But what they had told me was that they had downloaded me with it. It was called an inertial damper, all right? and they showed me how when you see like a USO hovering over the water, they're actually extracting life energy, okay, which is going to be like orgone energy. That's what they're extracting from the water, all right? And once that's processed through, they utilize that for the anti-gravity field that they release on the skin of the ship before they do a dimensional shift. So that is what they told me there, but that didn't conform to what I heard. When I look into black boxes, there's a connection to anti-gravity right now that somebody in Switzerland, there's a company in Switzerland, if anybody gets on YouTube and puts in black box anti-gravity, this company will come up that's trying to be anonymous, and they'll show this black box doing anti-levitation everywhere, all right? So that's kind of one part of this, all right? One part of this system, all right? But now we're going to take it to the other part, the second part. That becomes a little disturbing to a certain degree. There's a thing that is called extraterrestrial resurrection tube technology, all right? And what that is a lot of experiencers have reported seeing clone bodies, human clone bodies. Like, I'll give you one. Somebody that was speaking of it was Dr. Linda Moulton Howe. She had, anyone can YouTube that, Dr. Howe and resurrection technology. It'll come right up. What she says is this experiencer reported seeing another contactee on a bed, all right? There's a mantis being in there, and it comes over and reaches through this gentleman's heart and pulls his heart out, almost looking nearly holographic, but pulls it out, and the heart is completely cauterized, and he turns around and walks over to another side of the room where there's these clone bodies. And she says one of the clone bodies looks like this gentleman on the bed, but a little older, a little younger. And the mantis told her that there was something wrong with the gentleman's heart, but he had a task he was supposed to do, and his body was going to expire before he could do it. So they were going to actually place his soul into this clone body and put him back, and no one would ever know the difference. That wasn't actually his physical body that he was born with, basically. Now, when they transferred this soul energy, the soul from his body into the clone body, they utilized this black box. So apparently the black box has the capability of containing soul energy. This is something that was also brought up by Dr. Carla Turner. She'd said quite similar, all right, and how actually virtual reality technology was used to deceive us to a certain degree during experiences. But nonetheless, all right, when you look at this resurrection tube technology, all right, that puts a completely different spin on what we would call the resurrection. And I think on what Christianity would say about the individual they're calling Jesus. And I mean to offend no one here, I have no religion, so I don't prescribe to any of that. But there are some things I think this need to be evaluated. Okay, when he first showed up outside of the tomb, he was crucified, right? The first time he showed up, the angels came down in the tomb and told him, "Why are you looking for the living amongst the dead," or something. And they don't describe what these angels look like, okay? But anyway, when they go outside, he's outside, right? And he's glowing, and he won't allow them to touch him. And he made a couple little appearances, right? He won't let anyone touch him. So that to me sounds like a lot like holographic projection, does it not? And then when he finally showed up and ate later on, he had holes in his hands and like they weren't fully healed, and he allowed them to touch it. That tells me he was more corporeal. And whatever happened, as far as what happened to him, the damage to his body was so extreme that not even this resurrection technology could completely fix it. So I think we need to look at this more in terms of how things are now if we were a Type 1 civilization, which they don't want to admit that some things going on then were. Does that make sense? But the resurrection technology, I'm sorry.
As you're speaking, though, what I'm seeing is like it seems like from 2013 and 2014 was learning about the play, the theatrics that was happening on this planet. And now 2015 and probably 2016, we're going to be analyzing what's going on the outside of the play and the props that were set up. That's where it seems like we're going.
Yes. You know, interesting. You know, you bring that up. That 2009, 2001, 2010, that involved a thing that was the monolith. And, you know, the monolith was basically what science fiction would call a Bracewell probe, all right? And Bracewell probes, what they do is basically what it did is it went to the moon, and once you rope it, it sat there dormant until we started showing activity of becoming a Type 1 civilization. And then it became active, right? And that's exactly the way a Bracewell probe would be. And when I say that, I think there's certain things that in our own solar system right now that need to be evaluated. Things like object VG 1991. That's one. SKT 344 is another one. And these are objects just that if Earth was once a Type 1 civilization, the same way NASA has rocket boosters that come back to Earth, maybe for Star Trek fans, Voyager, things that will come back to Earth eventually, some of this technology. And that's kind of what I'm anticipating. That's why I'm watching a lot of things like comet sighting. I did watch Comet L9 and a few others that come into our solar system and come very close. But I think it's only a matter of time VG 1991 is in an orbit not much further than the moon around Earth, I do believe, or around the sun. It's not that far ahead of us. And I just, it's food for thought. We'll put it like that. Sorry, we went on 2000.
Interesting.
On that.
No. We need to think. But, okay, so I'm going to go into another realm that is also very interesting. I just learned that our DNA is actually a crystal strand, and it emits a frequency. You can tune it up. You need to take silica and keep lots of silica in your body. And I know when I take lots of silica that my intuition and my psychic abilities really get enhanced. So I think this is why the dark cabal has been poisoning us, was to literally keep our DNA shut off. But now with the inaction of the sun and the plasma and all of that, and also purifying our diets, which we're doing, and purifying our water, we're starting to become crystal from the inside out. And I'm noticing that people are putting more crystals in water. There's like a movement to throw crystals in water to tune it up, to clean it up. Then I came across something on your wall called Mel's Hole.
Yes.
Okay, teach us.
Mel's Hole. All right. That is, I've always been a fan of, he got in some trouble, I guess, but Art Bell. I was very much a fan of him in the early 90s, especially the span of about 89 to about 96. Really good shows he would do all night long, okay? One night, he had a gentleman on by the name of Mel Waters, all right? And Mel claimed to have a piece of land in, I believe it was Washington State, that where on his land was a hole. And on this hole, he claimed it to be almost endless. And it had always been there. The Basques that lived around there, the Native Americans who lived around there, they all knew about it. All right? And apparently people have been going there for decades, just dropping all sorts of stuff in it, tires or whatever the case, and it never filled up or anything. All right? Now, Mel apparently did some tests with this hole, all right? One being lowering as much fishing line as they could down there, which never yielded anything. But they put some ice down there and lowered some ice down there to see if it would melt. And this ice became something that became emitting some type of a light, and producing some type of a heat, to where that it caused, I think, some problems. All right. Another thing they did with this hole was they lowered down a sheep down into this hole. When they bring this sheep back up, it had died from apparently fright when they lowered it down. But when they bring it back up, they do an autopsy on it to see exactly what, because there was a tumorous-looking thing on its stomach or something. And he claimed that when they cut this the stomach, this came out. They pulled out in this tumor was a small seal, a baby seal that had human eyes. That they wanted to kill it at first, but they were feeling emotions coming from it telepathically, and they let it off the table and it went and jumped back into the hole. Now, the people that live around there, which are, I think they're called the Basque, Basque, they had claimed that long after that, people were still seeing this seal from time to time, and it was communicating with them through the radio. And it told them that the ice was very dangerous, and it could destroy our world, even the little amount they had, if it was misused. And I find interesting correlations to what this ice is described as, the properties it had, to what they call the smoky sun that was supposed to be the core of the earth, and that was supposed to lit up Agartha and Shambhala. It was supposed to be a smoky sun that never died. It burned all the time. There was no darkness there. That's just the Admiral Byrd type of myth or whatever. But nonetheless, sometimes where there's smoke, there's fire. Mel's Hole, the thing is this, back then it was a different internet, but when you tried to Google where he said he lived, the Google map was blanked where that little spot was. He claimed that the government came out and took the ice and seized the property from him, and that, there'd be something else there. But I think we're looking at the hole itself maybe dimensionally. I think a portal of some type.
That's what I was getting at, the portal.
When there's a movie, one of the Predators, the Predator movies, it's like one of the last ones where it's kind of corny, but they're saying the Predators created Egypt or something. But when they first show up, you see this Predator ship pull into orbit of Earth, and it fires some type of a proton phaser beam down towards Earth, but towards this pyramid, and it hits beside it, and it makes a tunnel that goes all the way down so far to another pyramid that's built down there. And they even have to slide down this smooth tunnel to get there that goes so far, miles. I'm not so sure we're not dealing with something similar to that. That would definitely be a portal. I think it probably has several different deals, several different uses.
Well, I've actually, I'm sorry, I've noticed in Russia and in different countries that these holes are appearing all over now. And I think that those are portals. And I know that some other ETs, I don't know this, but ET experiencers said that this would happen during this time. These portals are bringing in frequency of a higher vibration, and that's why it combats the dark cabal and their chemtrail stuff, is because the chemtrails just stops the sun, but the star people are very brilliant. They can go ahead in the future, and so they've rectified that. I also know that they've rectified that through volcanoes. Do you know that too?
Okay, say the last part again. About volcanoes. Just a couple words before that. I'm sorry.
That the star people are actually bringing in higher vibrations and frequencies in other ways than the sun. They're bringing it from within, and the volcanoes are actually opening up to bring in frequencies. We have portals that are coming through these holes. There's rocks that have been seen, I think it is in Iraq or Iran, where rocks will open up and frequencies, or like a hole opens up and these frequencies are coming out. And I think this is how they're raising the vibration on this planet.
Yeah, there's several ways, I'm sure, You've got a lot of different beings here that are doing that. I think there was some that I had come into contact with, and this was strictly by telethought, this one. But it kept coming to me every time I was trying to meditate, so I had to acknowledge this being. But it was a wavy green light, and it addressed itself as Oshar, and said it came from a planet named Obanar. And it was here that human light was dying, and his race was here to bring transonial enlightenment. I didn't know what the hell that was. I know a little about science, but I had to look that up, man. What? But he had given me the vision of the crystal, quasi-crystal. So it must be slightly, it's dimensionally out of sync with us, but it's a quasi-crystal they're building in one of our oceans. It's large. And it's to help, the vibrational frequency of Earth. The same way that the whale and dolphin sounds would, the same way, but it's also bringing in a different type of frequency of light. But he had also advised me that the government, whoever, cabal, whatever you want to call them, has a way of summoning them with a certain type of scalar frequency. And it summons them and disrupts the work at the same time. And to be very aware of some of the ships that keep coming through the portals that are continually emitting red, beyond what our normal plasma electromagnetic frequencies would be for, if you look at the scale of metal, how metal, plasma metal reacts in our atmosphere. It's a chart on that you can pull up on Google or anything, different colors. It tells you why some of the ships flash some of those colors if they're metal in our atmosphere at certain altitudes. But this here is different. He had implied the ones that stay red all the time.
I just saw a video of one that stayed completely red. I think it was on not Richard Gere, but what was his name? Greer, the one that he did a video last month or in January, and they had, it looked like the typical Palladian wedding cake type ship, and it illuminated all red. So what is that? Yeah. Explain, pray tell.
That I don't know. He just said that they were negative, and that makes sense. I know that as well as you do, there's been a lot of that going on that way for a long time, and there was definitely some type of a war that was going on physically and astrally, a type of galactic war. And to be honest, I've heard a lot of people thinking that it's still going on. And I know that you have some connection that way too, but I've been kind of told two things. One, that we're dealing with a time lag, and a lot of that is almost done now, and it's moved to a different frequency. That in our science, there's a thing that's called micro wormholes, and that a lot of these beings are coming through micro wormholes, which are unstable and harder to control for any forces that are trying to block them, all right? And you've got another problem. You've got negative beings that are starting as negative thought forms in our mind, and then they start using our own pineal gland, our own endocrine, to start projecting outwards, okay, through a system, something that was called inductive linkage, all right? They use our pineal glands for that, but the Lords of Light, the higher beings, used to use that to manifest also through the pineal gland. The negatives have done that, though, So a lot of these abductions, some of them, these beings are beginning as negative thought forms, and they're manifesting through our own pineal gland, using that as a wormhole, which is what it is, okay, to manifest into this dimension.
That's a Narnia movie. There's a movie in Narnia. I think it's the second or third one. It's the third one that they say exactly that. Watch your thoughts because you create it.
Mm-hmm.
And they created a beast.
Mm-hmm. You know, there's a. Sometimes you've asked me about a few books. Another good book is The Keys of Enoch by J.J. Hertog. That's an excellent book. It combines quantum physics with certain breathing practices and like almost prana kriya yoga type of practices. It's brilliant. But on there's an illustration. I don't have it handy, or I would tell you the page. But there's an illustration in there where it shows an individual, and I posted it on my timeline a while ago, but it shows individuals' pineal gland going outwards and what appears to be an almost Krishna type of being meditating outside of that light. That's the same process, inductive linkage, but it's being used by the negatives for the same thing. See what I mean? And that takes us into something else. You know, what kind of a trap is it that erases the soul memory of an immortal being? Let's stop for food.
Okay, hold that thought because I'm going to get there. But what I want to go to is something that you brought up, which is my favorite subject, the black goo.
Ah, yes. Hey, can I reiterate on something else real quick that I didn't complete? The black box.
Of course you can.
Oh, thank you, Doctor. All right.
I'll take a box of Cease candy.
Yeah. There's okay. As far as this, and I've talked to some experiences now that have told me something different. They remember being in a black box or being transferred by one, or being in one but not being contained or trapped in there, being like agreeing to be in there or even being protected in there. But they also said being these boxes are placed around the ship because they're also power sources. And it almost brings us to like a type of bioneural circuitry. I've seen a lot of these ships I've been on are organic, and they have a type of fiber optic bioneural circuitry that is sentient and allows the crew members symbiotic control or symbiotic union with the ship itself. So I'm just saying that it first kind of tripped me out a little bit to think if the negatives is that what they're doing, they're trapping enough souls in these black boxes to run their vehicles. And if you take that a step down, okay, to what Dr. Carla Turner released to us in her movie that Spielberg did, which is interesting. People should always pay attention to what Spielberg does, all right? And in this one, it was a show called Taken that was on Sci-Fi only. It was a miniseries, all right? And on there, they revealed something about the Roswell technology, but a step beyond that, that those panels we've all seen with the hands and everything, that the crew members themselves were actually not just the pilots, they were the power source, which would be basically what we would call Kundalini. They were using the power of those things and the power of thought, all right? So,
whoa, and then that takes me to Disney, because Disney did a movie, Atlantis, and in Atlantis they did the same thing.
Really? I haven't seen that. See, that doesn't surprise me. But, you know, it takes it to a more frightening level if you're talking about people that are having negative experiences and people that are disappearing behind it. Are they trapping enough souls, the negatives, to run their ships in that way as this biofuel? And it scared me when I started thinking about, God, that box that I saw even looked like Spock's brain, that one. And what the hell was that? That was to encase his consciousness, his brain. But I had to come to experience that isn't the boxes I saw were different. But there's still something going on there, you know.
Well, that's weird because George Kavaslis a couple of years ago, 2.5 years ago, he did a show with me, and he said that the black goo was the archon energy, the soul goo of, and then you talked about the sentient oil.
Mm-hmm.
So here it is connected again.
Well, let's take it a step further. We're using moving references and movie science fiction references. Let's go a step in that direction with that. X-Files, and I would say this: Chris Carter and the people that did that, the very first season of the X-Files, that gave out much information. And that very first season when it started, individuals getting a black fluid would run up on them, and their eyes would go black. All right? And it turns out that this black fluid, this black oil, was the gray race in their nanotechnology form, organic state, okay? And that's what it basically is, some type of sentient fluid, sentient nanotechnology. And, it takes us into the black goo we're talking about. And let's start with not just the X-Files, but how often there is a black goo that comes up in science fiction, or just the movies in general. We could go like the Creep Show #2. There was this big black tar thing in the lake. Okay, back to the show we like, Star Trek: The Next Generation. There was one called, coincidentally, The Skin of Evil, and it's the one where Denise Crosby, Tasha Yar, left the show. She was murdered in that one by this being called Armis, who was the skin of evil, and he was supposed to be the leftover waste product of a enlightened race that was allowed to bring all their negative emotions to the surface, and it created this goo that they discarded on this planet. But he looked like a goo, all right, a black sentient goo. And that comes up, okay, over and over again. And to be honest with you, I don't deal as much with the negative stuff. I really, that's my experience has been very positive. But yet sometimes our spirits, our guides bring this to our attention because it's a real fact and exists.
I see it in the detox foot baths.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
People that are on pharmaceutical drugs, if they're taking a lot of drugs, it comes out in their foot bath and it smells like oil.
Wow. At first I thought this when I had to give it more credence, and I started thinking, is this something that would be like governmental or Illuminati type of deal? But I'm hearing other experiencers and other more seers saying that they've seen a like black mass that is coming over humanity and has been coming over the planet. And I think that, and they're saying that this is of extraterrestrial origin. It's sentient. And somehow it's trying to help keep us asleep for sure and keep us in darkness for sure. And it's another part of this system they're using to keep us asleep and wipe clean and subdued. But anyway, it's something interesting that was, well, I guess we didn't go into the immortal soul, so I'm getting ahead of you there. Immortal soul traps, we didn't go that far yet.
Yeah, I'm going to go there. But X-Files also has that, and we've seen that on some of the newscasters. We've caught, they're on YouTube, a bunch of them, where they'll be talking and they have normal eyes, and then all of a sudden their eyes turn completely black.
Mm-hmm. And, and I think that's a separate phenomenon for the one that's been really on the uprise the last few years, which is called the black-eyed children. The black-eyed children, I think, is a slightly different phenomenon, all right? What I think we've got there is, do you remember, I think they're a warning system. Do you remember many years ago when we had those blasted Cabbage Patch dolls came out, and they were so popular? Remember that back in the early 80s?
I have one.
Okay. They had an answer that came out to them that caused quite a ruckus, and the answer to them was called the Garbage Pail Kids. And what the garbage pail kids, they like came out as cards at first or something. And what they were supposed to be were kids that had survived a nuclear holocaust. And they were all mutated out and stuff. So it caused quite a ruckus, all right? But what I think we've got here is these black-eyed children. I think they're more of a warning system, like a garbage pail kids. I think that's what they are. And I base that on a couple of things. But the people that have encountered them, the few people that have touched one, or what most people who encountered them have said, is that, outside of the fact that they seem to be like a vampire and ask to get into your house, people normally are just terrified by them, all right? Terrified. And that's part of the warning system, part of this, that what they're generating. I think their eyes are black because they've seen so much devastation and they've been exposed to generations, maybe, I don't know, of nuclear toxins that their eyes have gone black. And if that's what the warning system is they're giving to people. I say something else, too. The few people that have actually touched one say that they actually came down, they've been sick for a short time, that really seemed to mimic radiation poisoning. So the black-eyed children, I believe, is a different phenomenon. I don't think it's going to persist the way it is much longer. But I think it's a warning system for one potential timeline we don't want to take, one we're close to. But that's separate from the black goo, which I understand also turns eyes black for reasons we'll get into later.
Well, I can, something that I just learned, Bashar was talking about this, that the Zeta Reticula were exposed to radiation from all their technology, that they had bred out emotions and their genitalia so they couldn't repopulate, and they actually went with the mantids and asked the mantids for help, and that's part of the reason why they came back to this planet or Earth planets, because of the DNA, that our DNA can fit with anybody. And so that's why they were using our DNA.
It makes sense. It has to be really evaluated why there is a continual sexual connotation that comes with these abductions. I myself have had many physical experiences. When I was a child, I started having to start off astral, kind of dream-like, and partially physical, but not as much. And that didn't work for me, so I wanted more tangible, something I could prove this has happened to me. And when they actually responded years later, I wasn't fully prepared for it. I mean, nothing bad happened to me, but nonetheless, it's just rather disconcerting for your daily life. And like I said, none of my experiences were negative. I've not experienced reptilians, which I just got criticized for tonight. I have not experienced grays. I've not been experimented on. That's not what I went through, all right? Now, I have experienced a bunch of other beings and seen some things, but that's just not it. And I was obviously protected, and they were just a different experience.
Ray, too, he has not gone through that as well. He's only met them, but they've never experimented on him or took his sperm or anything like that, nor his dad. But I have read where Stephen Jones is also an experiencer. I believe he's in Australia, or no, he's in the UK. And he talks about when they would pull him up to ships, that he would play with these kids that were hybrid children. And I believe Pete has had some experience with that as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I think that a lot of these experiencers, we haven't heard about them all yet because they're staying quiet, but quite a few experiencers have been brought to two ships to acclimate with these children and play with them, and they said that they're very stoic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that goes a variety of ways. I, too, have experienced such and have, as they do, offspring there. It's just different because we're all dealing with different factions, different beings. But what I went through is nowhere similar to what I'm seeing other people going through. All right? And I couldn't even remember that until much later. You know what I mean? So, but also there's something else. And I honestly hadn't heard anyone talk about this because I would wake up sometimes not at home. And when I say that, I wake up in, like, the school. And in the school, I'd be in this little room, and they have me doing things with my mind, psychokinetic and telekinetic things, telepathy things, but normally, like, making water move with my mind, and feathers, always feathers a lot, move feathers with your mind. And then the next day, have this experience, feel like I hadn't slept, go to school, try to sit there and do it, and I couldn't do it at school here. So it pissed me off. What's the point? You know what I'm saying? But yet then I realized later that the last time I remember going there, I went back and they had me, it's like I graduated, I was done with it or something, and they wanted me to go show other kids how to do it. They were a little bit younger than me. And I did it a couple of times, and I started saying, no, it doesn't work back at home. I don't want to do it anymore. And the teachers were always beyond my mortal vision. So I think that goes two ways, you know. But in the way that I would say I've been in the maturation chamber, I've dealt with a mother of hybrids that was not like the ones I've seen described. All of our experiences are different. When I underwent that, it wasn't anything like what I've heard others going through. I haven't heard of the telepathic fetus transfer. I've never heard of that. So, you know, we all have different experiences to a certain degree, depending on who you're dealing with.
Ray actually talked to me about that. He was explaining how they have children, and he said that it was through thought. And when I kind of grilled him on it, he didn't know. He didn't have all the parts because he didn't experience it, but they just said that it had something to do with when one person loves the other one. And Alex Collier talked about this too, that they would be able to transfer their love into a fetus and have a child.
Yeah, this is different. I was with someone else, and this individual probably had conceived, and they transferred. You know what I'm saying? So they transferred a corporeal zygote and then split it from the DNA level, all right? And when I was contacted by this individual, my offspring, and I will tell you I had no idea she existed because I could not remember it, despite the fact that I've been back to the ship several times apparently to witness her gestation period. I couldn't remember that. And she's telling me, my kids. Your kids? That doesn't make any sense. I mean, your kids, you'd be like 18. And I didn't understand. Neither could I recall this, not because my mind had been wiped, but because, name one, we don't even reproduce like that. We don't even think that way. And number two, between the environment on these ships, the ones I've been on, and our dimension here, there's a difference. You get there's a temporal distortment there that creates a temporal aphasia that makes you sick. You know, I've heard a lot of people saying they're on some ships and they were going to all these other galaxies. I beg to differ. Maybe they're bending the space-time continuum for you. But otherwise, like the ones I've been on, you're not going to survive there that long. It smells a lot like ammonia in there, especially in the maturation chamber. It smells, there's a mist in a lot of these rooms that is not, it's some sort of a molecule they can obviously breathe and so can we, but it's not quite for us either. You know what I'm saying? So to me, on there, it feels like being dizzy all the time and being pulled down by G-forces at the same time, and you're getting telepathically smashed by the crew members, okay? And it's just a whole entirely different experience. But little things like... I'm sorry.
I wanted you to talk about the water sounds, because we've heard with George where there's the air. You can distinctly see that he's in space and flying, and you hear the air whizzing by. And then sometimes there's the bubbling. It almost sounds like a toilet sound or something where he's swooshing in a water. What is that?
That I don't know. Most of the sounds I've heard on the ships is this deep bass, a very deep bass type of hum, and normally it comes from the engines themselves. I've seen several different engine configurations. Two of them were designed when people get around them. I was told by both, not just astrally, but they're capable of the vibration and the frequency can heal human flesh as well. So sometimes they'll allow experiencers to be around these engines just so the vibration can heal them. See what I'm saying? So I don't know. That's normally the sound I've heard. Several different types of basses. There's even one that the Doggone tribe has. I think it's called a whip roar. It's a type of thing that the elder gets up like once every couple of years on this rock and spins this bullhorn, I think it's called. He spins it, and it makes a sound that they said, that the ships make that sound. They're correct on that. But that's the sounds I've heard. What
about,
answer your question.
What about fluid space?
Okay.
You're not getting away.
No, where you want to go with this now? Okay, the fluid space. From what angle you want to address that? There are things that are called the levels of awareness that are addressed as the levels of fluidity, all right? And there's certain techniques you can do to try to access that that we won't go into now, but there's certain beings that you can do that exist in a level of fluidity that I believe are vibrations below us. And I don't really advise trying to access them. But a lot of people that are, trying to access these type of levels and trying to open up portals for that, it's like, like Ouija boards and things like that. That's a knock on the door for these beings that are like our first cousins that sit here just a few frequencies removed from us. And if you go in like a radio booth, you can tune into 93.9 or whatever, but the truth is you've got thousands of frequencies going through that tower. And you're in there isolating one, and the rest are just kind of tuned out. It doesn't take much of a disturbance to let a couple more frequencies through.
Okay. I'm going to ask you some questions. Try to shoot me some quick answers, okay?
You got
What's
it.
a galaxy?
Usually 2 million stars, 2 billion stars normally.
Dimensions?
Vibrational magnetic fields, different levels of them to some degree, different levels of vibration.
Timelines?
Curved, closed curve time. Closed curve like curves will be a way to bend time.
Black holes?
Charged vacuum embodiments. Look at the Casimir effect. I don't think we're viewing those things correctly yet.
Stargates?
What?
Stargates.
Popular since the movie realistically exist. Can come in many forms. Hyperdimensional, internal stargates, external stargates, physical Merkaba stargates through our own light body.
Solar system?
Oh, sorry, you cut out a little bit there. What was that?
Solar system?
Oh, can be all sorts. I think that ours is unique. Not all the solar systems have circular planets orbiting their stars, and not all are in the Goldilocks zone.
Do ships change color when they enter different frequencies?
Do ships?
Yes.
Yes. They do it based on what I just mentioned earlier. Anyone pull up the electromagnetic plasma in the atmosphere, electromagnetic metal in plasma, how they react in our atmosphere. So if you get one there, like when we see something that goes like a flash, okay, you see one of the ships do a flash, and it's like it's the Millennium Falcon or maybe the Enterprise. It must have went to warp speed, light speed, right? But in reality, it's still there. That flash was a dimensional shift, okay? Then it has quantum locality, okay, non-locality, and it's actually still there. So you're going to see a flash and a color.
Okay,
Or
this one is going to...
Yeah.
I got one that's going to bend your brain, bend your noodle. Okay, listen to this one. Could light people appear that way as a light being because we do not have a comprehension of their color and their vibration?
Yes. Yes. We need to have a frame of reference to even perceive the light corpuscles or the light quanta that they are. We need a frame of reference bad. So sometimes we interact with different beings, jump in our field of awareness all the time, and we don't have enough freed up energy and enough free awareness to perceive it correctly because we're lacking a frame of reference because it doesn't fit in our third dimensional conformities.
That's what I was thinking, because don't we have something with our eyes where we can only see a certain preferential view? We have a really limited perception.
More than that, anyone that studies the eye, all right, and like if, many things, like let's say the art of invisibility, all right, it begins not just manifesting electron cloud around you. It starts with how the eye actually sees. One, we have a line of sight. One, we've got peripheral is usually in black and white. That right there is what I said. When you see the eye begins, it sees color first, or movement, color, then movement, then silhouette. All right? If you're below the line of sight, there's no color, and you're not moving, you've already put someone blind to a certain degree. Also a reason in peripheral why so many of us see spirits running by. And we can perceive them at our peripheral, and when you look straight, you can't see them anymore. So there's certain things. That's been a study for a very long time. And most criminals
okay.
don't.
That was a devious laugh. Okay, this very quickly, because we're kind of running out of time, but I want you to cover what happened on Lemuria, briefly.
I can go back as far as Mu. Mu was where you had a race known as the Sons of God came here. There was a hybrid project, all right? When the hybrids got initiated into the technology, all right? Most of the installations you saw, like you see in Egypt now, which is the remnant of this, all right, the pyramids and things like that, these installations were actually to protect the technology, which could convert matter into energy and energy into matter. And it runs the same way as these ships we just talked about, off a type of Kundalini energy, which means the operators themselves power these devices. And when these hybrids infiltrated the temple, they used these devices with these carnal natures of what we call the sons of men, which are basically some type of hominids, all right, Australopithecus probably. Okay, that's what I'm saying anyway. And this energy was released at these devices, okay, and they absolutely destroyed. It was the first cataclysm that destroyed Mu, all right, and broke it more into what you would call Atlantis and Lemuria at that point. And then the wars continued on, another one, and then eventually they were destroyed by what I'm seeing as tidal waves. A lot of souls incarnating right now that remember drowning in some major cataclysm.
This is going to be an odd question, but what are the chances that the Pyramid of Giza is actually a ship, that underneath some of that stone is actually a ship?
I think none. That's not what I'm seeing at all, nor would I remember at all of the construction of those. Underneath there is an aquifer, a water under there, like another river under the river. And what we had used it for then was to bring up water from this artesian well, and through the gravitational device that was in the capstone, which was the staff of life, it was used to bring up the anti-gravitation, to bring up the water, and it was processed. The water was processed through the pyramid and sent out when it was not inundation time for the Nile. But I was not from Egypt. That's just one of the places I went after the destruction, after the cataclysm, of the total cataclysm of what would be the last one, Lemurian. A lot of us that were called the sons of God left and went different places there. But everywhere that we landed, okay, you're going to see pyramidal structures and ancient monoliths and things like that to protect the technology. And people should pay attention to another movie, The Never-Ending Story. The major nemesis in the Never-Ending Story wasn't the big dog. It was a thing called the Nothing. And what the Nothing was doing was dissolving energy into matter and dissolving Fantasia into nothing, into energy, basically. That's kind of what happened to Mu.
What is the chances that the capstone was just an organic, energetic light beam that was formulated from the walls of the Pyramid of Giza?
Hold on, what? You lost me on that one. One more time?
The capstone wasn't a solid. It was an energetic energy, a frequency that was a beam of light, kind of like lasers that were all put together in a point.
No, I don't think so. I think it was simply insulated with gold to protect the staff of life. That's why it was different. It had to be insulated different to the technology up there because it was a problem as it could be inadvertently a weather modification unit. It would draw in electricity, lightning. It could do other things. So it had to be well encapsulated. Another reason why that piece of that. And when the leaving of the Sons of God left, a lot of these devices were dematerialized. And then there were several hieroglyphs to give up to trick the sons of men when they started coming to take over the technology, or try to, or whatever was left. Coming to ransack, basically, like Napoleon pulling off the nose of the Sphinx, things like that, scratching off what other hieroglyphs were on there to make them appear to not be black people. Anyway.
Okay, what about, we're going to go to planets now because I want to know what you get around different planets, and this is going to tie in with something that I'm working on now, but I'm not going to release it for several weeks. But let's go to your favorite planet, Saturn. I knew.
All right, well, something that came up that you found very interesting. You know, I was told that Saturn was irregular as a child in one of these experiences. I located a book. This is going a long time ago, maybe 1980. There's a book that used to be called The Ring Makers of Saturn, a very good book that has very interesting pictures in it, all right? And when you look at Saturn, it looks like an antenna. And what this book said, and it's supposed that these are pictures that are taken by not just Voyager, but like the Pioneer class of satellites. And what you saw is these ships that appear to be almost 500 miles long. And the author is conjecturing that they actually are making these rings and constructing them, all right? And they're like some type of factories, all right? Now, this Saturn emits a frequency, a type of scalar frequency, all right, in these rings that is part of what is something that shocks and wipes clean immortal souls. So we talked about the types of trap that would catch an immortal soul and wipe it clean. It starts there. When we come into the solar system to incarnate as spirits, which starts at Saturn, we start getting hit by the scalar frequency, electric shock also, and then we come through, we start incarnate with this scalar frequency, this net goes from Saturn over over to Cydonia on Mars, and then the dark side of our moon, and also certain monolithic structures, ancient structures here on Earth. And, you know, if you look back to what the gurus said, they always claimed that we incarnated through the dark side of the moon and that we go back to the moon when we dream sometimes. Now, you take that and correlate that with Richard Hoagland and what he called the shard on the dark side of the moon, and I think you've got the beginnings of something. That's where I see it, Saturn tying in, and that's what I think about it. It's also got a couple of Saturns around it, or a couple of planets around it that I think are a little anomalous.
I've seen some, well, that goes back to the movie They Live, but only he was saying that frequency came from the moon, but it's really coming from Saturn.
Well, you know, the first thing that got me involved in that was not just what my guys kind of told me, but there was a brother that used to be a jazz musician. He's long dead now. His name was Sun Ra, and he used to wear this hat that had all these planets on it, and he said he was from Saturn. And I just always found that interesting. You know what I mean?
That is bizarre. Okay, the moon, is it a ship or is it a planet?
I believe that the moon we're seeing now, I believe, honestly, I believe it's artificial. I'm looking at things like that new hum that they've seen coming from it that imply it may even be hollow. I believe that it's under artificial control. I believe there's a reason why NASA's not going back there very often at all. And I think that much should be looked at when it comes to someone like Richard Hoagland, a book called Dark Mission, and all he says about the dark side. He used to work for NASA and JPL. He's got a lot of images he blows up. Another book I found as a child, it was a book called Somebody Else is on the Moon by Raymond Bernard. And that showed a lot of interesting pictures showing what looked to appear to be tractors and machinery and things like this around some of these craters around the moon. On the moon, I'm sorry.
Just in case anybody's wondering, I'm going to put his book list on EBH under his name, Barry Littleton. I'll put everything there. Anyway, let's go to Jupiter. What do you get with Jupiter?
What I do know is, I think, once again, that brings up 2001. The planets like Europa and a few of the other moons need to be seriously looked at in terms of that they could possibly harbor some type of life that is beyond the dimensional, what we're not just dimensionally, but physical life, perhaps. What I know about Jupiter is this, all right? I had experience, I had to be under hypnosis to recall it, but it's with a group of beings that were from Andromeda, all right? And most of the beings do not give me locations where they're from, so that's unusual, all right? They give me sectors and weird names like that. But anyway, they said they're on a spiral in the Andromeda Galaxy, on one of the arms, one of the far ends, arms. But they showed me a Stargate that looked to me a lot like a Magellanic Cloud. And that is the entry aperture, and the exit aperture is just outside of Jupiter. So there's a Stargate there, which is a word you asked about earlier. That's all I can really tell you about Jupiter. I've even heard that this net I just described also starts there. And the Jupiter does have some very faint rings also that could be connected to. I don't know.
Wow. Can you tell me a little bit about the Andromedan Council that you worked with?
Yes. One, they did a DNA or a light reconfiguration on my DNA, which was basically just a light bed that kind of seemed like a copy machine. All right, they were these beings. There were two different types I saw. One were and it's I've never seen any grays or anything, but these beings were blue, and they were kind of like really blue, and they were very little. When I say very little, I put them maybe 2 feet tall, maybe 3. Okay, but as faces, their eyes kind of look like grays a little in that way, but they weren't though. There's also a lot of those beings that are light, pure light, that don't have bodies, and there's also a type of scientist and medical team type of deal that they're more beige beings, all right? And I have seen a being from the multiverse on one of their ships. But that, as far as only exposure to them that I can recall.
The blue bean that you just described is the same one that people have talked about, the beans that are under the mountain at Lake Tahoe.
Mm-hmm. Like the cryptoterrestrials, as they're called sometimes, or maybe Telosians. These beings, okay, they were very blue, but they're little. They had their eyes were black, but they also had on these blue suits, light blue suits, almost their complexion, that looked like almost like racing outfits. And they had a white stripe that went down the legs and the arms. And these white stripes had this fiber optic technology in it that allowed them to have a symbiotic connection with the ship. So they didn't even have to move their head some of the times. They're already kind of there communicating with the ship. And that ship seemed to be somewhat physical. Some of the devices in there were definitely physical.
What was their job or their role? Working with our planet, or was it just you?
At that point, they were working with me, but it's the same thing. They said that I didn't believe in myself and that I needed to be helping to awaken by the light process I was going through. Most of the beings I've dealt with, all right, and they're part of an alliance. They made that very clear to me now. They have been honestly more interested in Earth than they are humanity. They're not against us, but I've been told that we won't be allowed to destroy the Earth again. Humanity won't be allowed to destroy the Earth again. And I've seen a picture of the Earth in orbit around our sun, and it looks like a burned-out cinder. So I think the Earth is a great deal older than we think, and a great deal more has happened here than what we think. All right? So in that way, they say, too, that they won't, but outside of not being allowed to destroy Earth, they're not going to step in and intervene on humanity destroying itself in its own free will zone. So that's kind of where that comes in for me. And most of my contact experiences has been about healing. They're very about healing.
That's mine too, is healing. I just want to give a quick shout out with the chemtrails, if you don't mind.
Go for it.
I've come across a new product. It's called Zeolite with EDTA and with bentonite clay. They're just two products. You can get Zeolite with EDTA, which will remove the heavy metals and which will help rebuild your cells. The bentonite clay is a negative ion, so anything that is a poison in your body, it will absorb and help to get it out of your body without doing any damage. Those two things really need to be taken right now, along with B12. Antibiotics, it suffocates you. It depletes your B12. So every cell in your body, 27% of the oxygen you breathe is through your nose. The rest is through your cells. And with the chemtrails, what they are doing is they are cutting down our oxygen and suffocating us. And I am seeing with my patients an overload of fungus. And we need to get rid of that. We need to start building up our oxygen. And so this is a really good time to take advantage of this EDTA and Zeolite, which is combined, and then you can get a bag of bentonite clay, and I blend it up in a juice, and then I just add it to another juice. And I keep drinking that all day long to help pull out the poisons from the chemtrails. When I'm looking at the body to rebuild the body, there's only two things that take down the body. One is the heavy metals that they're spraying, and number two is the parasites. If we can get rid of those, our body is going to kick into gear and start to really heal. The more that you heal, the more that you're going to get more in tune with the frequencies around you and be able to uplift your DNA, ignite that DNA so that you can start tapping into the gifts that you were supposed to have. Thanks for letting me say that. Okay, let's go back. I love this Andromedan because do you think that this council, what's the name of the council that you were working with, or the alliance? What did they call themselves? Do you know?
Yeah, it's always strange. You know, it took me 36 years to get this name. After insistently asking for every contact. They're called the the Extragalactic Interdimensional Cooperative Alliance. And the emphasis they put on the cooperative. And they span from the micro to the macro. And first thing I started asking is, I'll be honest. First thing I say is, are you effing kidding me? You know what I mean? When they give me that answer, I say, I'm already a Star Trek fan, and that's called the Federation. This is even worse than that. And they said it was no joke. And so I started asking, are you all the names we hear in ufology and in this New Age circles, I was like, are you the Ashtar Command? Are you the Galactic Federation of Light? Are you the Association of Free Worlds? And all those different words I had heard. And they told me, no, we're the hierarchy of that. Those organizations were losing. We had to step in. And they're very serious. But, I didn't. When I asked for things like, Andromeda, that was just a regression that came up. When I asked, like, my first guides that come forward, and I could see the physically, I went, where are you from? Where are you from? Who are you? But they'll say things like, where are you from? Where you won't understand when they start telling me. They say, well, we're beyond Sector 48, beyond the nanospectrum. So what the heck does that mean? And I try to get a light years. Start looking around 900 million light years out. And then I start asking for a dimension. They say 16th dimension and up. These are the beings I've been dealing with. And it also explained why they were corporeal in several different dimensions, except this one. They choose not to be here much. They said it's painful here. So,
are they working with other people?
At that time, they had told me 16 people, just like they said 16 dimensions, because I was trying desperately to find, this goes back, more than 20-plus years, trying desperately before they even gave me the name. I was just trying to find anyone that was experiencing these type of beings. I've encountered many, but they don't conform to modern ufology hardly at all. So I was trying to find others, and they said, no, when the time is right, there'll be others that come forward, some that are actually overseas. And I think that's this time right now.
What about the elongated skulls?
That was the characteristics of what's called the Sons of God. Okay, I've heard them called all sorts of different names. There's some different factions that are getting blended in there. But that was a characteristic that was melanin-dominant individuals that had elongated craniums. All right, and every time you look in, especially the first dynasty of Egypt, all right, look at the elongated craniums that the first dynasty of royalty had. And by the time you get down to the ones that people are more familiar with, like King Tut, he had a round skull like you and I, a Sons of Men rounded cranium, because they were not operating out of the endocrine system like that anymore, a different deal. And you have other hybrids that slip up in there like Akhenaten that everyone's so taken by. He looked like President Obama. He looked like he's half extraterrestrial, whatever the stuff I've heard. Look, that's another hybrid, all right, that was obviously gone on ego. He was the same thing the Sons of Men have always dealt with. He stripped out on changing things and making things about him, and, that's, different deal.
Tell me about your favorite part. I'm going to do an interview on Urantia, and I want to know what is your favorite part of Urantia, which is a book, by the way.
Yeah. I would say, well, first of all, it's a good book, but the exception is it needs a lot of discernment, all right? And especially when it comes to the racial parts of it, it's crap. But, however, when it starts talking about the spiritual hierarchy, how the structure of the universe is, both angelic-wise, spiritually, and physically as well, and it describes that quite a bit. It also talks about, as the name Uranta is Earth, so that's the Earth book, all right? And they go into things like Uranta Seraphim, Earth angels, are resident here, have always been here, okay? It talks about that, about things, different levels of death, things that we would call mansion worlds, which would be, for someone like me that likes the Bardo Thodo, I always kind of like that book, the Tibetan Book of the Dead. The Bardo means the different astral levels also. It's kind of the same thing they're describing there, all right? Those parts of the book are really good, really good. It's only the racial part that I get I steer away from.
Who wrote the book?
The first half of the book. It's some doctor, a psychologist, that ultimately they say it just appeared at his doorstep, but it's some type of a channeling done by multiple individuals, my understanding. So that leads a lot, that's why a lot of discernment has to be used in it. You know what I mean? Not just because it's a channeling, but it's been doctored by who knows how many people. But there are certain tools, if you can kind of catch the light encoding in it, that are good. So I'd say up until the first part of it, up until about the racial part, it's really good. And it describes several different types of angels, different creator sons, different hierarchy beings, different types of souls, different types of planets and beings on them, different brain beings, and all sorts of stuff. So it's a very comprehensive book in that way that, is a good tool, good read, if nothing else.
You mentioned that you got to see the future Earth, or you know about the future Earth. Can you tell us this timeline, what we can expect, or what you've seen for our future Earth?
I think I mentioned past Earth, sitting as a cinder in space. There are a couple of timelines, I think, so it's hard to say. I mean, there's a few that could go, I think, several different ways. One thing I think that could happen is that we have some type of divine visual intervention. All right, and what I mean by that is not some 7-foot guy coming in on a cloud, but one of these either biosatellites or Legion ships come into our atmosphere. It would only have to remain for a couple of minutes. And no one need to see the beings on board. Telepathy will take over from there, but just to make a presence in that way would change things. And, I based that on something that I noticed about someone I followed since he came out, Major Ed Dames. He's actually, anyone that ever wants to take the time to get on his website, he's got a video called The Kill Shot that they send out for free. He's got to pay for the shipping and handling and shipping and handling, I'm sorry. But he had described after one of the solar flare hits us that he calls the kill shot, all of a sudden he sees all these soldiers in the street and people in the streets putting down their arms and going home to their loved ones. Not just him, but the entire remote viewing project deal saw this, right? They're all hitting on this, all right, on this target. But that makes me think of something, that when he's saying that, this is something that came in that changed things so much during a disaster that people went home to their loved ones. And some of the vibration and love that comes off some of these ships is different. It's going to neutralize some of this hate that would come off and the fear. So that's just where I'm kind of coming from now. That's kind of where I see one timeline there. I also see a timeline where we keep destroying the Earth enough that we get either an Earth-directed solar flare or we get an earthquake or natural disasters that nearly eradicate humanity. And when that happens, there are others here that will help us rebuild, those of us that are left. And when I say that, I think there are humans that are here that are human, but were raised in another galaxy. seriously. All right, and I think they have access to this alliance technology I was just talking about. I think they're in hiding. I think we've seen them several times intervene on things, such as these nuclear bases, where they're setting off the killing the warheads and showing up around there, or maybe that huge meteor that came into Russia about a year ago, I think it was, a year and a half ago. But anyone that looks at that video, when that meteor is coming in, you see and something else. They're trying to say, oh, it must have been another asteroid that came in and hit it. They've got holographic technology that can make it look as it appear as a UFO, appear as a plasma ball, things like that. So I think you've got beings like that and certain alliance members and different factions that are here to help humanity maybe rebuild with the younger ones that are here, if that happens. All right? Hopefully it doesn't go that way. I try to steer away from the disaster line, but I don't know. We're in pretty bad shape right now. Humanity's about to go down for the count, and we need
no,
help.
We're not.
Yeah, we are.
Not
yes,
on my watch.
Right
No.
now, if something is not done, and if we don't stop our own son from rebelling against us, we're in trouble. And I'm not saying it can't happen. It can happen. For starters, in that book you just mentioned, the Aranta book, it mentions something I've seen. They call it Morontia schools, Morontia schools. Morontia schools, which are basically schools here on Earth where the resident seraphim are actually the teachers. And humans are no more than students and custodians. But we got to find a place where to meet these angels that are right here resident on Earth long before humanity, that have been trying to help us. We have to find a medium ground where to meet them and where to get this assistance. It's serious and it can be done. And I feel that the young starseeds that are reaching out, like to me right now, that is our best shot. Some of them are getting older now, like in their 30s. They're married. They're having kids that are having experiences, and they're trying to help with that. So that's our best shot right now, I think. So I'm not saying we're down for the count completely, but it has to be stopped. There's no more time to waste, especially during the time of shift or whatever is actually happening.
I have a lot of experiencers that listen to the show that have never come out, and I was wondering if you could give them some advice.
Yes. First of all, if they might think they might not have had that much of experience. See, if you're missing time or whatever, if you can get the money together, seek a hypnotic regression. Even for me, I was Mr. Conscious Experiencer, because most of mine were until I got older and they came physically, and I missed all this time. But even then, when I did these regressions, more came out about the times I thought I knew something. I didn't really know much of nothing. I mean, it really is a trip. It'll open up gates and open up a channel of communication that you not thought was possible. The other thing is try to find someone that does understand, that is having these experiences. That's why a lot of people reach out to me on Facebook. But I was trying my response. I have no problem with that, because I didn't have anybody to talk to. Does that make sense? I think that helps a little bit. There's people like you that we can reach out to that are actually taking the time to talk to somebody like me. And no one knows who I am. I'm nobody famous or anything like that, but I've had experiences that I can describe a little that changed my life. And some things I was born knowing. So don't run from it like I did. I ran. I was hiding so long, and this feels better than hiding. You know what I mean? So I would say don't hide, embrace who you are, and pray on it, meditate on it, and these things will start happening for you, coming through.
And if you want to get on the air, go find Barry, talk to Barry, and then Barry will hook us up. Barry, what would you like to say to the listeners that are listening right now that have just woken up, that are confused, frustrated, angry because they found out the truth? What would you tell them? Try to remain positive, and don't confine yourself
to any one knowledge base. I'm not saying go study dark arts or anything like that, but expand your palette a little bit, because the experiences that you're having are not, normally mine were not chronological, and they were not always linear. So trying to perceive them in that way, sometimes just the experience themselves, the retention of memory from it is hard. So I'd say broaden your perspective a little bit, gather some material from different perspectives. It's helped me a lot hearing what other experiences have gone through. And I got to admit to you something. I've only had positive experiences, all right? But now I've talked to a lot of people that have not. They've been hurt or been injured or abducted, and it's not a joke. I mean, I used to stand against that, negative experiences, because I thought it was just the media trying to portray that because my experiences weren't that. But now I found something different. You know, it's not about me. This is something that's happening to a lot of people. And any anthropologist, the best ones say, always listen to what the indigenous population is saying. So some people may be dealing with fear and possible assault, but find out what's happening to you. Don't just run from it. And, I mean, I wasn't being hurt, but learn, because I've heard somebody told recently, I was afraid they would come back again and again. Start finding ways to defend yourself. It's going to lend you into the realm of spirituality, not religion, but spirituality, because spirituality comes in hand with this shift, this change we're going through, the new technologies we're discovering, like zero-point technology. That's got a lot to do with spirit. When spirit is incorporated more into our technology, this place can, you know, like you said, it doesn't have to be over.
You've done some fantastic videos with Peter Maxwell Slattery, and he has them categorized by episode numbers. Which of the episodes that you have done with Peter would you say is your favorite and that you would recommend for people to go view that want more of Barry?
It would be the third interview. If I can find it, I can tell you what it is. And there's another one that actually that shocks me. We just did a couple of days ago, and he just posted it, and it seemed to get generate more responses than any of the others. The other one would be, the first one would be...
That'd be 88.
Yeah, that's the one. That one in episode 52 would be the other one. In episode 52, and I never wanted to really talk, and Peter's really easy to talk to. He's real cool. You know, we've become good friends now. And sometimes we get on there and just get real and just kind of have a little bit of fun with it. Everything doesn't have to be so strict and straight that the average experiencer can't even identify from where we're coming from. You know what I mean? Because, heck, we don't know everything. I certainly don't know everything. And, you know, just trying to understand means we got to reach out a little bit. So I would say those two episodes would be the ones, 52 and 88.
Well, thank you for coming on to the show. We're going to have you back. Loved your information. You're excellent. Thank you so much for giving us your time and teaching us.
Thank you. Thank you very much for being graceful with me, Doctor. Thank you for having me.
Next time I won't. Put your gloves on. Okay, thanks, sweetie. All right, everybody. Bye. Barry Littleton. He's on YouTube, and this video will also be up there. I'm going to try to get some pictures that correspond with the information he was giving you. And please keep doing your own research. We put a lot of new information together tonight. It's not accurate. We're still playing kick the can, and your contribution is, well, we need it, because even though you think that you're learning just by yourself, you're actually increasing the collective, because we're all linked together through the grid on this planet. So whatever you're learning, we're actually all learning. So thanks for that. Keep doing it and stay positive. See you next week.
Thanks for listening. These shows are designed to help you develop your truth. If you are not ready for it, or if it does not fit with you, leave it behind. Videos of the shows are available on Sam Mugzi's channel on YouTube. If you would like